of the givens of this year's midterms, the impact of former half-governor Sarah Palin, particularly on those boots-on-the-ground House races. The party estimates she could be decisive in as many as 55 of them. The Democratic Party. Leaders have even coined a phrase for the Republican intramural wars in which they hope Palin will get involved, the Palin primaries. The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, in a strategic move, its cheeky statement reading in part, quote, undeterred by the embarrassing loss she helped bring to the House Republicans in last fall's special election in upstate New York, Sarah Palin announced she wants to get involved in more Republican primary races this year, so we're more than happy to help her out. So she doesn't have to scribble notes on her hand. The DCCC is unveiling Palin's primaries that will highlight the most divisive and messiest House Republican primaries in the country. The reference, of course, there, the Palin-endorsed conservative candidate in the New York 23rd, Doug Hoffman, who was so championed by the right that the moderate Republican candidate withdrew from the race just before the election and endorsed the Democrat for the first time in over a century in that district. The Democrat won. Thus, the guide the Democrats are providing Palin includes 55 competitive House Republican primaries. Some of these races boast half a dozen different Republican contenders. Many races include Tea Party candidates. The leitmotif, Republicans trying to outdo one another in terms of their conservative bona fides. I'll turn to the Washington bureau chief for Mother Jones magazine, David Korn. David, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
Democratic strategists are probably correct in thinking that Palin could help, if not sow the division, then complete the rupture during these primary stages of these races. But is there any broader calculation here? Is there an effect of a Palin endorsement on the General Electric? How about that for a Freudian slip? Any effect on General Electric? Never mind everything else. Any effect on the general electorate, including the independents, in the actual vote?
On the general election. Well, I think what we're seeing here, I mean, this is a stunt. They have us talking about it. Yeah. They're getting attention. But I think this is sort of a warm-up before you bring the show to Broadway. And what is that show going to be? It's going to be a horror flick in November 2010, starring Sarah Palin. Right now, the atmospherics are looking pretty good for House Republicans in the coming elections in November. The unemployment is high. If it stays high, independent voters and others will be looking at incumbents and feeling rather ticked off. There are more Democratic incumbents out there than there are Republicans, so Democrats have a lot to fear. Now, what the Democrats, of course, want to do is make the election a choice between us and President Obama and the Republicans. Not a referendum on the Democrats and Obama, but a choice between the Democrats and Republicans. And what is the best way to tar the Republicans all at once? Well, find a few leading Republicans that are just really pretty unpopular. And Sarah Palin, in the latest polls, 71% of the public said she's not qualified to be president. Her unfavorable to favorable rating was 55 to 37%. So to any degree that the Democrats can tie local Republican candidates to Sarah Palin, it probably will help them in many districts. Not in every district, but probably in enough.
Is there any sense in these other 55 cases that we could see something as dramatic as the New York 23rd, where it went so badly that there was the, as they used to say on Monty Python, there was the silly candidate and then the very silly candidate, the conservative, and then a Republican to split that part of the vote?
Well, will we see something completely different? Mm-hmm. I think it really depends on the districts. The DCCC, the Democratic Campaign Committee, has picked 55 Republican House primary campaigns, and they're all in very different districts. In some districts, they have sort of the same dynamic that we saw in New York, in New York 23. But in some of those districts, even there's a Democrat who's now the incumbent, meaning it's a Democratic district. So if you have, a Republican running a state senator, such as I think in the Mississippi 1, against an incumbent Democrat, and then you have a conservative Tea Party type, as you have down there, a former lobbyist for Fox News, Angela McClellan, who was also an analyst on the network, mm-hmm. Coming in as the Tea Party candidate, it's kind of similar. She has a little more dynamism than Doug Hoffman did, but if Sarah Palin comes in and picks her over the state senator, who is a Republican, and you got to figure that a state senator in Mississippi is not a flaming liberal if you're a Republican, mm-hmm. right? I mean, that could cause a civil war that will damage either Republican candidate in the general election. And that's what the DCCC is hoping happens in at least a handful of districts if Sarah Palin sticks her nose into them.
If, as the White House has indicated, it plans to try to present the midterm elections as a nationalized referendum as much as possible, with Obama obviously in the forefront, This dovetails then with what the Democrats here are trying to create here, this party of Palin, at least in these 55 districts, does it not?
Yeah, often in an off-year election, and particularly when unemployment is high, it does become a referendum on the people in power. That would be the Democrats and President Obama. The Democrats in the White House obviously want some, if they can make it a referendum on the Republicans, great, but they want to make it a choice. They want to portray the Republicans as the party of no, the party of not doing anything on jobs by opposing the bills that we see them opposing at the moment. And if they can make it the party of Palin, so much the better. This is what they're going to be trying to do in the next few months to try to, they're fighting a historic, tide, or I should say trend. Usually in these type of elections, the voters who are upset are looking to throw people out. They're not looking to make a contrast and a comparison between each side. And so the Democrats are going to have to try very hard to change that dynamic. And if they can't do it across the board nationally, pick a few districts, 10, 20, 30 districts where they have a chance of scoring with that type of strategy.
But what does it mean for General Electric? David Korn of Mother Jones. Great, thanks, David.
Good to be with you, Keith.